Choosing Chaos, Solo Motherhood by Choice, the podcast for women who are done waiting for the one and ready to become the parent on their own damn terms. We're talking fertility, pregnancy, emotional chaos, and the village that it takes to raise a kid. Sometimes you're crying in the bathtub. Sometimes you're crying because your toddler bit you. And sometimes you cry because you chose all of this. Welcome to Motherhood, solo style. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Choosing Chaos, Solo Motherhood by Choice. I am your host, Laura. We are kicking off this episode a little bit differently this week because I want to start by truly thanking each and every one of you who listens to this podcast. So many of you have reached out with the kindest of words, and you have shared how the stories on this show have inspired you to take steps towards motherhood on your own terms. Some of you have even discovered that guests from this show live in your own communities. You've connected with them. You've expanded your village in real life. Hearing these stories honestly means the world to me. I'm so honored to witness the ripple effect of this podcast, and I hope that you'll keep sharing your wins and the journeys with me, and so that I can pass them along through the Choosing Chaos community. This podcast began as a way to share my story, my experience, and the stories of other women. And it makes me incredibly happy to know that it's growing and making a positive impact. On this week's episode of Choosing Chaos, we're welcoming Masha, who has a beautiful story about how she welcomed her little gifts into the world, along with a little surprise gift that she shares with another mom. Let's dive in. Welcome, Masha, to Choosing Chaos. How are you doing?
Doing okay. It's been a long day already and it's only noon.
And you're based in Virginia, correct? Or Maryland? Okay, Maryland. So you're close. We're neighbors.
Yeah, where are you?
Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I saw that you went to Shady Grove, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I considered them when I was going through the fertility process with my son. And because they have a location here in the Wexford area, but then they also have that one. And at the time, they didn't have anywhere to store sperm in Pittsburgh. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want to make that drive because we know what that can be like with an IUI. You're like here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah, I had a few experiences picking up my sperm because I had the sperm from Fairfax Cryobank, which has a local office. Nobody ever told me that they had a free courier service to Shady Grove, so I drove down there, picked it up, drove to Shady Grove, drove the empty container back. So it's like 2.5 hours in the car with some sperm. It's very interesting.
I know what that feels like. And it looks like this giant R2D2 container. And and in the process of moving mine from one place to another, I sliced my finger open on that stupid thing.
Oh no.
I know. Yeah.
So you
it wasn't
bled
fun.
and
all the things. Yeah. I was like, you might want to wipe that off, like sanitize that real good because I cut my finger on it.
No, I gave it a pep talk the whole way and had to pick up a few times. And the only time I was like so done with the whole process that I didn't give it a pep talk was the time it worked.
Maybe that was a sign.
I know. Maybe I just felt so comfortable with that donor.
Right. Yeah. You went through IUI and IVF. How did you decide to do the combo platter approach to those?
So I did IUI with my older daughter. It's hard to describe how many cycles I did because they had done an HSG and said that I had a block 2. I went through 6 cycles, but we canceled 4 of them. Sorry, we canceled 2 of them because I was ovulating on the wrong side, or so they thought. And then it was actually interesting. I always tell people, like, you don't really know what's a positive and what's a negative because I had an ectopic pregnancy, unfortunately, during one of those cycles. And after the ectopic, I asked my doctor, like, should we repeat the HSG? Because obviously it was in the tube that was the good tube. And I said, like, if it's damaged, there's no point in doing any more IUIs.
Right.
And so we repeated the HSG and they called me afterwards and said, okay, so we have good news and we have kind of strange news, but it's also good. And I'm, okay. And they said, your left tube is fine. Oh, well, that's great. Your right tube is also fine. What?
You're like, wait a minute, backtrack here.
Yeah, like what? And they're like, probably what happened during the first one is that we pushed the dye too hard and it spasmed shut, but it's actually open and fine. Yeah. So the next two cycles, I didn't care which side I was ovulating on. And actually, had I not had that ectopic, I wouldn't have my oldest daughter because I was ovulating on the wrong side that cycle and it would have been canceled.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I just like, just, if I know people are going through it, I'm like, you just don't know what's good and what's bad. Like that ectopic was terrible and I was so sad, but like I wouldn't have my older daughter now. So
How far along were you when you found out about the ectopic pregnancy?
very early. It was a situation where I did not know you could get a maybe as a result to a pregnancy test.
Yeah, I didn't know
Um,
that either.
yeah, you can because they want your human growth hormone to be above 100 for it to be a positive, but anything over zero is something. And my first one was 50. And they didn't call me, and I'm like, why are they not calling? And the answer is because they were trying to get a doctor to like explain to me what that result meant. And they said, look, it could be that the embryo implanted late, and that's why it's such a low number 2 weeks after the IUI. Or it could be ectopic, or you could be having a chemical pregnancy. We just don't know. And they
Gosh.
followed me for like 3.5 weeks. And sometimes it was like it's doubling, it looks like it's viable, and then it plateaued. And they're like, yeah, this is not in your. We did a scan. They're like, it's not in your uterus,
Yeah.
and they started me on the medication to stop it.
Is there pain associated with an ectopic as well as the medicine that you have to take to terminate?
Yeah, so for me, no. But
Okay.
I know other people who have had it because I was being followed so closely. Like most people don't know all of that stuff that I knew,
Right.
and so they were able to find it before it ever became a danger to me or caused any kind of pain. The only physically negative part about it was just the medication made me dizzy and I couldn't really drive.
Yeah.
But no, it was thank God not painful physically. So
Because some women with an ectopic, you can end up losing that tube, right?
you absolutely can.
Oh,
Which is why I
wow.
was like, let's repeat the HSG because who knows, maybe there was damage. It was growing in there for a while. So I feel like most people who have damage, it's usually like a little later in the pregnancy than when I got the shots. So thank
Yeah.
God, no physical damage as a result.
Yeah, it's a blessing that you were being closely monitored because unfortunately some women don't have
Yeah.
that available to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the positives, I guess, of going through fertility treatment is that you can catch stuff like that early. But there's also a negative to that too. Like there are lots of people who have probably had chemical pregnancies who never realized it. They thought their period was just late. But those of us who've been through it, we get the blessing and the curse of knowing that when that happens. So
Yeah. I also
yeah,
feel like it's dependent on the clinic too, because I
yeah,
feel like some women will, in our situation, will be monitored like at that 6 month or 6 weeks and then the 9 weeks, and then we sort of graduate, right, from the fertility clinic at that point. Whereas I know people that have gone to a fertility clinic and when they announce that they're pregnant, they're like, okay, well, good luck sending you off to your
right,
OB now.
right,
And
yeah,
it's like, wait, I just told you I was pregnant and I'm like 4 weeks pregnant, so I have to wait 8 more weeks to even like confirm this pregnancy
yeah.
or see or hear my baby. Yeah,
No,
it's
absolutely.
so weird how that works. So you also did IVF, and
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that.
I did IVF to have my younger daughter, and it was really my doctor was like, we can try IUI with you. Like we know IUI will work with you. But the thing of it was, I was 40 when I got pregnant with my older daughter. And in order to start any of the medications, because I didn't have extra embryos, I needed to wean her. And so I went for my first follow up visit when my older daughter was 8 months to be like, okay, what do we do for number two? And by the way, my doctor laughed at me because when I graduated with my older daughter, he's like, see you for number two. And I'm like, never in a million years. And then,
Yeah,
a
of
little
course.
bit later, it's like,
Yeah.
hello.
Right.
And he's like, you have to wean her before we can really do anything, given the medication I'd been on previously. And I was like, okay, this kid, my entire parenting style is like stick a boob in her mouth. Like I don't know how to how to do that. She ended up nursing till she was 27 months old. I was just older than I wanted to be when I
Yeah.
decided to start for number two,
Yeah.
and I was like, we could try IUI, but by the time it's time to move to IVF after a few cycles, I think, I was 43 already. Like the odds were already in the toilet. And I really appreciated this. This doctor who I really enjoyed working with at Shady Grove. And he said, look, I want just to be honest with you, like your odds of bringing home a healthy baby are maybe 10%. And they're only that high because I know you have a ton of follicles. And that really at 43, like I would not be encouraging a lot of women to do it. And I need you to know that you may be throwing away your money. And I said, I understand that. Honestly, at this point, it's just like, I felt like I had to try. So I knew. And so I bought they do like a multi-cycle discount where you can pay for 2 IVF cycles and get like a little bit of a discount.
Oh,
I
that's
said,
nice.
yeah. And what I found when I did IUI with my first was you would finish the cycle and then just start right up into the next cycle with no
Hmm.
stop, no conversation about whether you wanted to continue or not. And I remember feeling a few times like a little helpless, like I didn't know if there was an exit point and if we were ever going to have that conversation. And I'm sure my doctor probably would have brought it up at some point, but I felt a little out of control. And so what I said to them is, I'm buying the multi-cycle. We're going to do that. At the end of that, if there is no baby, we are just going to move on with our lives. We're not going to do cycle after cycle after cycle because I already had a child and
Yeah.
I couldn't, I couldn't financially do that many cycles and, ruin her ability to have a good life.
It's so
Um,
expensive too.
so expensive and no insurance coverage. Yeah, which was especially annoying being in Maryland because Maryland has an IVF mandate. And so everybody there had insurance coverage except my employers in Alabama. So they're
Ah, of
right.
course. Yeah.
Right. So they're not covered by the mandate. But yeah, so I said, okay, we're gonna do 2 cycles. And thank God it was as many transfers as you needed. I joked in hindsight, probably I shouldn't have done that because it only took 1 retrieval and I ended up with 4 embryos that were euploid. The numbers were kind of insane for 43 years old. They retrieved 52 eggs, 44 were mature, 38 fertilized, 15 made it to day 5 and 6, and 4 came back euploid, which was,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Hell of an attrition rate, but also like those numbers were, yeah, one of the nurses said my doctor was like bragging about how many eggs. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad it makes him happy. That's great.
But also, you had to be in so much pain with 50 some eggs.
I was more uncomfortable the few days before that procedure than I was at 9 months pregnant both times. It was like
Oh,
this is a lot because you don't realize it, but the follicle with all the fluid in it is like the size of a grape. And so if you think about having 52 grapes in your pelvis, it's I preferred the retrieval versus childbirth.
so you had the 4, you said,
Sure.
right? That you were
Yeah.
euploids.
Yeah. I transferred one and I got pregnant and then I lost it.
Oh, how far along were you?
Not that far along. It was like 7.5, 8 weeks.
But still.
But there's something about that loss that was really, really hard. And I think it was because number one, I with my previous pregnancies, once they saw that it was like in the uterus, everything was fine. And I mean, I knew there could be a loss, but it was euploid, tested in the uterus, and I just kind of assumed that I would be taking home a baby. And when that didn't happen, I kind of fell apart. My mother was on the phone with me when I called after the appointment, and she's like, I don't think you can drive. I think you need to sit in the parking lot for a little while before I want you driving home.
Well,
Um,
there's such an investment that goes along with not just IUI, but IVF. I mean, it's such a process. It's like several weeks leading up to that point where you find out, one, that your embryos even make it through all the retrieval and testing and everything. And then you have the best of chances when they do transfer it, but there's still that small percentage. But at that time, you've already committed because there's an embryo, right?
right, right. And I think because I'd already kind of had a baby and like I knew how special that was, I think I just kind of really connected with that pregnancy and then
Yeah.
yeah, then it didn't work out.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
yeah, no, I was not in the best shape, but the second transfer also resulted in a pregnancy and a healthy baby girl, and she's turning 4 this week. And so that was really, it was really interesting because I think because of the loss, I didn't like connect with that pregnancy at all. And I was like in a single moms by choice support group, and they're like, yeah, that's called emotional cushioning, and you're just not ready, and you were too hurt last time. And I felt like the worst mom in the world. I'm like, why am I not connecting with this pregnancy? Why am I not like bonding with her? But yeah, we did get there once she was born, so that was really good. And
Did you feel like you were in that constant state of anxiousness or anxiety because you had experienced that loss, and not just that loss? I mean, you had the ectopic before. So it's like you grow attached to that embryo
yeah.
again, and then you get scared. And you're not just scared for 12 weeks because things unfortunately can happen after 12.
Yeah, and it was not the best pregnancy to have right after a loss because I
Really?
had an SCH, which is a subdural chronic hematoma. I think I said that correctly. But I bled for the first 15 weeks nonstop, and it
Oh,
was it was a significant amount of bleeding, like the same amount of bleeding as with the previous miscarriage. Every time I would go to an appointment, I would just be ready to hear like, sorry, it's no longer there. You passed it.
yeah.
Realize.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I started bleeding, must have been around 5.5 weeks, right around the time that I had the positive pregnancy test, like a week or so after that. And so I just assumed, okay, it's just another loss. That,
Yeah.
here we go again. And then I went in, and they're like, it's fine. There's a heartbeat. Baby's right in there. There's a mass of blood. Your risks for miscarriage are higher. I think they said it was maybe 50-50 given the location and the amount of blood. But they said that's also 50% chance that everything is just fine. And because it was like 10 weeks of bleeding, and it was a lot of it, I just never felt like I knew she was in there unless I had just had a scan. If I had just had a scan, I was like, okay, I know everything's okay. And then at my anatomy scan, which was 20 weeks, like 5 weeks after everything had cleared up, um, they're like, okay, so there's a problem with her kidneys. And I was like, okay, what kind of problem? And they said they're echogenic, which means that they're brighter than the other things around them on the scan. And they said, usually that means polycystic kidney disease. And I said, how serious is that? And they said, don't Google it. Go
Of
see a
course.
specialist.
Yeah.
And of course, then I immediately go home and Google it. And
I
it's
would
like,
too.
right.
Yeah.
It's like most babies don't survive till birth. The ones that do tend to die within a few days, and almost every child who has it is going to die by their first birthday. At least that's what my Dr. Google had said. I hope for anyone going through it that maybe that's not accurate. But it was really
Right.
bad. I called the specialist and asked for an appointment. They're like, "Yeah, we can get you in about a month." And I'm like, "No, no, we're not doing a month." And they're like, "Well, are you willing to drive a little further?" I'm like, "Yes, I will drive wherever you want me to drive." It's like a 45-minute drive, but I got in 48 hours later. Those 48 hours were terrible. I mean, I was crying nonstop, and go in, and those scans are really long. Like it was like a good hour and a half long scan, and then you have to wait for the doctor to come in, and the doctor comes in and says, "Okay, first, do you have any questions?" And I said, "Are her kidneys okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I have no idea what they saw on the scan the other day. Her kidneys are fine."
Oh my gosh. I'm so
And
sorry.
I was like, okay, that is the last time I listen to my OB when they say they can do an anatomy scan in their office. Like, just go straight to the perinatal folks. Not that I had another pregnancy, but that's yeah. So it was like she kept giving me these scares, and then when I gave birth to her, I had to be induced the day before her due date because my blood pressure was up, and they lost her heartbeat during the delivery. So
Wow.
it was just a stressful pregnancy to have right after a loss that had been so hard. She's fine. She's perfectly healthy, sweet little girl. Everything turned out okay. It was a little traumatic getting there. So
No wonder it was really hard to connect with her throughout your pregnancy because there's already a fear of just being pregnant, right? There's anxiety the whole time. But then to go through all of those things at the different milestones creates an added layer of stress and anxiety for you.
yeah, thank you. I mean, I have my two beautiful girls now, and they're great. I in some ways wish they weren't both rainbow babies. The truth of the matter is that first ectopic pregnancy, I switched donors after that.
You
And
did.
yeah, I would have had completely different children if that had not happened. And I love the kids that I have. And, again, I wouldn't have had my older daughter because I was ovulating on the wrong side if not for that ectopic. So I try to kind of like put it in that perspective of like, this is what it took to get here. But sometimes it's still sad.
Is there anything when you were picking a donor that you specifically looked for?
Yeah, so the first time I looked for a donor, I was looking for kind of like, the perfect donor, like the rocket scientist donor. And like, there actually was a rocket scientist in one of the profiles, but he had like these terrible genetic histories and like all these health complications. And I ended up picking somebody who was Jewish because I thought that was important. And that had really kind of narrowed things down. Plus, I was CMV negative, which is like a virus that you're supposed to like not get a donor who's positive just in case it causes pregnancy complications, which also
Which, by the
narrows it
way,
down. Yeah,
so hard to find somebody who's negative.
I
Yeah. The
know.
moment you check that filter, it's like 4 people.
I know. You're like, okay, I thought I had options, and now I have
Right.
this.
Yeah. Now I'm presented with 4.
Yes. It was pre-COVID, so the selection was a little better, but still, it definitely narrowed stuff down. And then if you had a Jewish donor on top of it, you didn't have that many choices. After I did 3 cycles with that first donor, what I discovered was it doesn't matter how good your donor is if you don't get pregnant, because my third cycle, they're like, you're not going to get pregnant. There's just not enough sperm in this sample. We're going to do it because you're here and you've already paid for it, but just don't get excited. Nothing's going to happen this cycle. And I'm like, great, thanks. Super helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for a couple million swimmers. And unfortunately, if they're like not at that sort of mark, then yeah, it's harder.
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4, and they're like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. After that, I went and I reselected through Fairfax, and I was very annoyed. They did not stand by their guarantee to refund for the ones that were not good. But I did, when I was talking to them, the rep that I was talking to said, we don't put it on the website, but if there's a couple that you're interested in, I can give you more information over the phone than you can see on the profiles online. And I'm like, well, what kind of information can you give me over the phone? And she said, well, you know how on the website it'll say whether they've had pregnancies or not. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, over the phone, I can give you a range of how many pregnancies. Is it 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15? So that tells you obviously something. And the other thing that she said she could do was for each batch that was frozen, they do like a control sample, and they can tell you how many sperm were in that control sample. So she was like, the one that you picked, his control sample was the unwashed, which is what Shady Grove wants, was like 11 million, but a couple of the numbers you've given me are like much, much higher than that. And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Sign me up.
Yeah. I went through the whole process again, and then I called them and I'm like, okay, so give me the dirt.
Yeah,
Which
right.
one
Yeah.
of these are gonna get me a baby? Because just having sperm is not really what you're going for here. I actually really, really, really love the things that my kids I think have gotten from that donor. Like in a lot of ways, it's really kind of like what probably needed to complement what I was already bringing to the picture. And the second donor was not, the donor that my kids are actually from was not Jewish, which in hindsight doesn't really matter that much, because in Judaism, it's all about whether the mother's Jewish. It doesn't really matter what's going on with the sperm donor or the father. And honestly, like the genetics of introducing somebody who's not Jewish into the mix, especially not an Ashkenazi Jew, are that's not a negative at all. Like some of those genetic traits are not the best. I think it was good in the long run. It was just a lot of looking at donor profiles.
Yes, for sure. And they sell out so quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, in the Jewish culture, is being an SMC frowned upon at all? This is more so for my knowledge, just because I'm not too familiar with it.
Yeah, I haven't experienced any of that.
That's good.
I think so. I grew up Orthodox, which is like not where I am now, but definitely a community I'm very familiar with. And a lot of the people that I know from growing up, from my parents' friends, have given me reactions. And because it is such a child focused culture, not being married is considered kind of weird and strange and all that. But not being married and wanting to be a mom anyway is considered only natural. Like, of course you still want to be a mom. Like, of course you do. Everyone wants to be a mom, which of course is not true. But that's kind of the assumption. And so I think it's relatively common. I know that like in one of the support groups I was in, somebody was like, why are all of you Jewish? Like, what is going, like, is there a problem with Jewish men? And I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening. I think it's just that like more of the single women are like prepared to go down this journey.
Yes,
Yeah,
agreed.
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
So you had two additional embryos that
Yes.
you had frozen. What did you decide to do with them?
So I'm a pretty pro-choice person, pretty politically liberal, and I really believe that if somebody wants to destroy the embryos that they have, that they should have a right to do that, and that's their choice. I couldn't make myself do it. I tried. I like tried filling out the forms, and I'm like, no, I can't. I can't do this because not only are they my kids' full siblings, but they're also from my egg. And I think if I'd had eggs or sperm, that would have been a very different decision. But because they were embryos, it just felt very different to me. So I went down the road of doing embryo donation. I started in some of the Facebook groups and I started trying to look for a match that I thought would work. But there were some things that were working against me on that and couldn't really find what I was looking for. So I ended up going through an agency called Embryo Connections. The owner of the agency is also an SMC, also has two kids. And
I'd
so
love to talk to her.
oh, she's amazing. You should get in touch with her. I'll try to
Yes,
send you her information.
please
Um,
do.
yeah, absolutely. So she was very understanding of what I was looking for. One of the things I was looking for was I couldn't quite picture any babies that would come from those embryos being raised in a non-Jewish household. Like that was really important to me. And it's a little harder to find in the private groups. And so she was able to kind of cast a wider net. And I had ideally wanted an SMC because I know it's sometimes hard for SMCs to be selected for donor embryos. So I was actually able to find an SMC and worked out. It took a little while to do all the legal stuff and all the procedures. Yeah, she has a 1-year-old son now. So
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah.
amazing. That's so sweet too. And it has to feel nice to like donate to somebody who, um, obviously we know this can be a challenging process. She has to feel so honored to have received your embryos
Yeah.
and to have brought this handsome little dude into the world. And just thank you so much for sharing your embryos with her because it has to feel a certain way for you to do that.
Yeah, it was not the easiest process the whole time. It was definitely the best of the bad options in my mind because like in a perfect world I would have been able to raise all of those kids. But with my age and with the preeclampsia that happened at the end of my pregnancy and I went to my doctor and I said, look, I'm not sure that I can even do it, but like what would that look like? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you can't try to get pregnant again. That's not who I am. If you want to try, we'll try to keep you healthy. But if you're asking if there's a chance of you orphaning your daughters, there's a decent chance of you orphaning your daughters. Not like 20% or anything, but 5 to 7, and that was just too high for me. Like 1 in 20 chance of them not
Yeah.
having a parent was too much.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have the best option available. And so I was just trying to figure out like how to navigate it. I wish I could say like I was such a good person that when she called and said she was pregnant, that I was like super like unconflictedly happy for her. And I was happy for her, but I was also like a little sad because okay, this is actually happening. And I think the week he was born, I was a little down in the dumps. To meet
Was a
him when he
part
was
of
about
you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just such a sweet little boy. He reminds me so much of my older daughter, just so much of her. And it was great that like he gets to have a life and she gets to be a mom. And so that's where I am now. It's not really where I was the entire journey, but I'm really glad that that's where we are now.
Tell us a little bit about your real raw emotions of doing that because that has to be hard, right? Because it was a part of you.
I mean, it was really difficult to kind of get through the process. There were points at which like the paperwork kind of stalled out, and I knew in my head like I should follow up because somebody has like dropped a ball somewhere and I should make this happen, but I wouldn't because I was like, no, I'm not even sure if I want this to move forward the way it is. I mean, I did want it to move forward, but I also wasn't at the point where I could be like, so I think you forgot to push that paperwork to the next attorney. And so thank God my recipient was able to take that ball and run with it because I was not emotionally in a place to be able to do that for her. And the agency was also good about that. Like they were like, okay, so somebody has dropped a ball here. Let's pick this back up. I think the hardest was like the week he was born because I just when my daughters were born it was so special to me, and to know that was happening without me being there was and without me getting to raise him was hard. But the truth of the matter is like it wouldn't have been a good decision. Like it would have been too risky. Probably, I'm not even sure if I could have handled three. I know some SMCs who do, and I think they're amazing. So, I think once I got through all those negative emotions and once I got through all that sadness, it's like, okay, no, he's a lovely little boy. His mom is really happy that she gets to be a mom, and they've got a lovely little life together.
Do you think you'll keep in contact with her and or eventually share that story with your daughters and have the relationship between them?
Yeah, so we did go meet them when he was about 6 months old, and my daughters know exactly who he is. Just this morning, I was driving my daughter to daycare, and she's about to turn 4, and she was saying, "When I'm 7, I'll be a big sister." And I'm like, "Well, no, but also you're already a big sister." And she's like, right, baby so and so. And I'm like, "Yes, baby so and so is your little brother." And she's like, "Yeah, he lives far away." Yes, he does. So
Yeah.
they've met him. They know who he is. They've seen pictures of him. Every time she posts something, I show it. And she sent us a Rosh Hashanah card recently, which was lovely. We stay in touch. It's not like super close, which I mean, it would be lovely in some ways to be closer, but also I don't want her to ever feel like I'm trying to backseat parent her. Like that is her child. It's my biological child, but that is not the same thing at all. And I do like to try to like reach out every now and again, and like if there's something that she's going through that like was very hyper specific to what my kids were like. My oldest was a terrible teether, like absolutely awful, traumatically bad. And so sometimes I'm like, how's teething going? Like, can I give you any tips that help me survive? Where I can help, I help. And where it seems like she's fine or she doesn't need any help, then I just stay backed off because in no way do I want her to feel like I'm trying to take over or impose in any way.
Tell us about your daughters if you would like.
Oh, yeah, they're amazing. I have a 7.5-year-old, and she is a lot like me, maybe too much like me in some ways. Um, which in some ways is good because sometimes she'll go down a path and I'm like, I know exactly where you're going and I know what's going on in your brain. And are you thinking X? And X is not really a correct way of thinking about this. Let's back off and try to figure out how to approach this better. Everyone describes her as a big personality. When she was 2, she had a t-shirt that said, "I'm not bossy, I have leadership skills," which, very
Future leader of America.
very appropriate for little girls who get called bossy when little boys would not get called such a thing. She has how she likes things to happen and what her vision is for things. And I have learned, and I also know from being a little similar, that there's really no reason for me to step in on certain things. Like she has her sense of fashion. Her sense of fashion is currently both very minimalist and maximalist. Like she wants like bell-bottom yoga pants that are black with like a sweatshirt, but 17 pieces of jewelry. Fine.
Okay.
And yeah, that's great. Whatever makes you happy in that area is fine with me. And then there are other areas that I have to like push a little bit. Like she was a little bit of a slower reader, which I was too, and so there was like a little bit of pushing that happened there. Now she's like great at reading. She loves it. It's her favorite subject. She loves picking out new books, and I'm like, okay, this is where we had to get to, and now it's up to you. You pick out what book you want. I can tell you books that I enjoyed, but like if you want that book about whatever, sure. As long as you're reading, I don't care.
Right.
Yeah. My younger daughter is very different. She is kind of like everyone describes her as very sweet, and she is very sweet. She's very affectionate, like wants 1,700 hugs a day. Yes, she's absolutely adorable. But she also has like a little bit of a spine that a lot of people don't see. They think like she's super sweet, but like then sometimes it's like, oh, you just smacked your sister. Like
She does it in secret.
she also has this she also has this thing going on right now. It's very almost 4 years old, where anytime her sister does something that upsets her, she comes and says, "Mama, she's punched me." And sometimes I'm like, did she now? Because it makes no sense in context of what was happening. One time, my mother lives with us, and so one time my mom was with them, and I was in the other room doing the dishes, and she comes in and says, "She punched me," and I'm like, that makes no sense given what I was hearing in the other room. Why would? So I yell into the other room, "Did she punch her?" And she says, "No, she's upset that she can't do a handstand and her sister can."
Dramatic go-to. She punched me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything
I
that
could
she
see
doesn't
that.
like means
Yeah.
that she's been punched by her sister. Okay, good.
How did older sister feel when you brought younger sister into the world?
She had been asking for a younger sibling pretty much since she could talk. She had been wanting a little sister and had been begging for a little sister. I remember one time I was pregnant, but I hadn't told her yet, especially like after the last loss and everything. And one morning she says, "So when do I get a little brother?" And I'm like, "I thought you wanted a sister," knowing I was pregnant with a girl. And she looks at me and shrugs and says, "Get both."
BOGO.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's what would have happened if there were twins, but no. So
Right. Yeah.
she was very excited. Like I brought her home. It was COVID, so she couldn't come to the hospital. And she immediately like wanted to hold her and sing her sweet little lullaby, and she was just like this adorable, doting big sister. Now that the refrain in our house for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, was she's a person, not a doll. Like she's you you can play with her, but she has some bodily autonomy here. If she does not want you to pick her up right now, then you cannot pick her up. Yeah, she was like the perfect big sister for a while, and now that my younger daughter is a person with her own opinions, sometimes there is some conflict.
Of course.
Sometimes there's conflict. They're still really sweet together. Like my younger daughter, we were at a birthday party at the playground. She fell down and just like tiny little scrapes on her hands, like barely, you couldn't see it, but she was crying and she was upset. And I think I was maybe not quite as sympathetic as she wanted, because I'm like, "You're fine. There's nothing there." So my older daughter came in and gave her a hug, and they were cuddling, and yeah. And the next day she fell down at a different playground, and my older daughter is like, "Wait, I put band-aids in the car in case that happened. Can I?" And I gave her the car keys and let her go to the car and get some band-aids, and she did first aid on her. So they
Oh,
they they are they are
she's a
very
little medic.
sweet. Yeah, yeah.
They're
I
going to be best friends when they grow up.
God, I hope so. Because, that's one of the things about being an older mom and being a single mom is like the odds of like you not being around and them being kind of alone in the world are pretty high. It's one of the main reasons I wanted to have a second. I mean, I wanted a second very much, but it was also a lot about my older daughter and making sure didn't feel like she didn't have anybody.
Weston will have cousins. He has 4 cousins. But when I first had him, because I ended up with a gestational hypertension, which then led to post preeclampsia. So I know a little bit of what you
Yeah.
experienced, but I was like, absolutely never again. At my 6-week appointment, I was like, hell no, you'll never see me in this office other than a yearly check or
Yeah.
and then I got to the point around 6, 7 months where I was like, yeah, maybe. But I kind of do want him to have a sibling because of that reason. Like, we're older. I'm 40. When he graduates high school, I'm going to be older and I won't be around forever. And the genetics in my family just aren't that great to begin with. I would love for him to just have somebody to look out for him and vice versa when he gets older, but also somebody to like, instead of bouncing off of mom all the time, maybe bounce off your sibling.
Yeah.
Throw them to the ground.
Playing together is really, I mean, it is life changing. Like, go downstairs and play is not something I could have said with an only child, but with
Yeah.
two of them, like, okay. I mean, the room will be a disaster when they're done, but they can entertain each other.
How do you get past that room being a disaster? Because I'm still kind of working through that as a parent to one, where it's like, okay, I hate that there's a mess all the time. And I'm trying to get to the point where I'm like, if I clean it up now, I'm going to have to clean it up again later. So maybe just leave it. But even that drives me insane inside.
Yeah, so I have a few different have a few different strategies there. It depends where the mess is. The mess being in their room doesn't bother me that much because people don't really see it when they come over. The mess being in the playroom in the basement doesn't bother me that much because it's in the basement. I do see it when I walk into my office, and that's less than ideal, but I can kind of handle that. It's because of course there's toys on every level of the house. It's when the mess is in the family room and the living room that I start to get a little antsy about it. I think what I've ended up with is because my mother lives with us and because she doesn't have great mobility, we end up with splitting the cleaning service. And so we have them come more frequently than I ever did. I would like have them come once a month, if that, if it was just up to me. But because my mom's here, because she needs some help and needs a little bit of extra cleaning, they come once a week.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. But because of that, Sunday nights are okay, everything has to be cleaned up because otherwise, when the cleaners come, their job is not to put your things away in the right place. Their job is to
Right.
clean, and they'll
Yeah.
put it wherever the hell they want. And you will never find that particular toy that is this big ever again. So it has to be where it's supposed to be before the cleaners come. So Sunday nights is our like downstairs has to be clean, the bedrooms have to be clean, everything has to be put away. And between that, it's like if there's energy for it, then we make sure that the main floor looks good.
Are they pretty good about cleaning and listening, I guess you would say?
Um, when they're in the right mood, yes.
I get it.
Yeah, my 7-year-old very much like I told her to clean up last night before dinner, which was my fault. I knew she was too hungry to do it without breaking down. It was completely my fault. I knew it was a bad idea. And she had a little bit of a meltdown and I said, "Okay, come upstairs and have dinner." And she said, "I'm not hungry." "You are hungry. Come upstairs and have dinner." "Well, I don't have to eat if I don't want to." "That's true. You have to sit at the table, and if you would like to eat, you can eat." And so she took about 4 bites and then she became this lovely child again.
She's hungry.
I'm like, "Okay, so are you feeling better?" "Yes." "Do you think you were hungry?" "Yes." "Do you think you can go finish cleaning up when we're done?" "Yes." And she was lovely. She cleaned up, she organized, everything was great. It's a lot about like kind of picking your moments and making sure that you don't tell them to clean up before dinner. Or if you do, it's like right after lunch when they're when they're
When they're full.
when
Yeah.
they're full. Yeah. I have friends who are like, my kids are complaining that they're hungry. I'm like, my kids never complain they're hungry. They just melt down. So
You mentioned your younger daughter being born during COVID. What kind of experience was that like for you, especially during pregnancy, but also during birth and early postpartum?
yeah, well, actually, the weirdest one was the fertility treatments because as many people who are listening know, as I'm sure you know, you can't control when those appointments are going to be.
Mm-mm.
And my older daughter was in daycare at the time. Her daycare was open, which was great. But sometimes the appointments were on weekends because that's when the appointments were. Because she was in daycare, I could not have my parents watch her. They were just in, we didn't see them for about a year during COVID because they had so many health conditions
Yeah,
until
which is
they were able
hard.
to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And so I was like, can I bring her with me to the appointment? And they're like, "We really would not prefer that." I'm like, "I understand. I don't really prefer that either. It seems a little strange." I actually had friends of mine meet me in the parking lot of the fertility clinic. I would have my daughter with an iPad in the car running because it was cold outside to keep the heat on. They would be in the car next to her with a window down. Her window would be cracked so they could talk to each other, but they wouldn't be exposed to each other because of COVID. They would
Yeah.
just
Okay.
watch her in the parking lot in adjoining cars almost.
Perfect plan.
I mean, you do what you have to do, right?
You do. Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
during those times where like you really didn't know how you're going to get it.
Yeah. You're just like, I don't, okay. But yeah, that's how I was able to get pregnant was friends watching my daughter in the parking lot. I think she was probably watching Rainbow Ruby on the iPad. You got to use an iPad when you got to use the iPad. But yeah, during delivery, it was just there just nobody came to visit in the hospital, and she was born at the height of the Omicron wave, which was kind of like a scary time to have a newborn because I mean COVID wasn't as serious for people with a developed immune system, but with a newborn, it was still pretty scary. And I actually ended up pulling my older daughter out of daycare for about 5 weeks until the numbers went down.
Really.
So I am immediately postpartum with a newborn with no support and a 3.5-year-old running around the house who has nothing to do because we just stayed in the house and got groceries delivered, and that was it for about 5 weeks.
So you were going crazy, I'm sure.
It was a lot. And there's more iPad time than I'm proud of. But
You have to do what you have to do.
yeah, yeah, we got through it. Everything was fine. I do sometimes have people who are like, "Well, you had her later in COVID. It's not like it was real lockdown." And I'm like, "It was real lockdown for us."
Right.
But
You
yeah,
don't want to put your baby at risk.
no, very, very, very much not. But they actually ended up being in the Moderna trial for the kids. So they were still very proud of that fact. They got little teddy bears with superhero capes on them. I mean, the one doesn't remember any of it, but the older one's like, "Yeah, I'm one of the reasons there's a vaccine." I'm like, "Yeah, you are."
How did you decide who was going to be in the room with you, the delivery room? Because you said your parents are at risk. So, and it was during a heightened time for COVID. So who did you decide?
So my parents were vaccinated by then, but my mom wanted to be in the delivery room with me, and I was like, "Okay, but here's the thing. That leaves my dad with my older daughter at home, and I just wasn't sure he could handle it. Like, he was a very devoted grandfather. He was competent. I just wasn't sure she would ever go to bed if it was only him there. I actually had a doula with me because I didn't want to give birth alone based on some experiences from my first birth. If I had had the nurses for my second birth that I had for my first, I probably would have been like, I'm fine, I can do it on my own. Because the nurses the second time around were lovely, like absolutely lovely human beings. The nurses from my first birth were, you know, the mean girl to nurse pipeline? Very much that. Like,
Oh,
very blonde, very thin, very mean. And
I'm
so
so
I
sorry.
just, yeah, it was not a great experience. I was like, well, if that's going to happen again, then I need to have somebody there. Also, because my parents are Orthodox Jews, there was not a guarantee that my mother would be able to be there anyway, because if I gave birth on Shabbat, she wasn't going to come to the hospital. If I gave birth during Sukkot, which was a holiday that was around that time, she wasn't going to come to the hospital. And so I was like, yeah, I think I need like a plan B. But my big concern was like, would I be able to get my older daughter to somebody to watch her and me to the hospital? Because if my mother was out of touch, then that would have been very difficult, to the point where my doula was like, look, I'm not allowed to transport your older daughter. If it comes down to it, I'll take her to her grandparents' house. And I'm like, thank you.
But she took you both?
No, she wasn't allowed to, but she said she would if like that was the only option,
Yeah.
or having like a 3-year-old in the delivery room with us. She's like, I will do what I need to. Don't tell anyone. I
Yeah.
will not say her name. But she did.
Of
She was
course.
like, I will break the rules if it comes down to that. Thank God it didn't have to. I gave birth to my younger daughter the day after Halloween. I dropped my older daughter off at daycare. I went to my standard, you're really old, we're going to monitor you at the end of your pregnancy appointment. And they didn't let me leave. They're like, no, you need to go next door. We do not like these numbers. And in the hospital, they're like, look, if you were 24 weeks, we would try to eke this out a little bit, but your due date's tomorrow. Your baby is measuring like 9 pounds. Like, we're not worried about her ability to survive out of the uterus. Like, let's just go. And I'm like, okay. It was very simple. I just called my mother and said, go pick her up from daycare. When daycare is over, take her home. And my mother kept saying, okay, can I come to the delivery room now? And I'm like, I think you should stay there. You should make sure
I think she's
everything's going okay.
yeah.
And I'd done a lot of prep with my older daughter about like, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go stay with. What I had not prepared her for was that giving birth takes a little bit of time. So she kept FaceTiming me while I was in labor, and I kept thinking, oh my God, like, she must be inconsolable for my mom to allow her to FaceTime me during labor. But she was just like, can I see the baby now? And I'm like, no,
Not here.
not, not yet.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I should have done a better job with, you won't be able to call for a little while because it takes a lot of work to get the baby to come out and the mama has to focus. But other than that, she was pretty well prepared.
How did you pick a doula for your delivery process?
Yeah, so it was the same doula I've used for my older daughter, because I had the same concerns. Like, if I give birth on Shabbat, my mom won't be there, and I don't know if I should do this on my own, especially my first time. This is going to sound like I didn't think she was a good doula. I did think my doula was a good doula, but I kept interviewing people who were in their early 20s, who I could have been their mother. And it just,
It just
I don't
didn't
know,
feel right.
something about that dynamic felt off. And also, you know, I'm not a tiny person, and some of them, you know, so what you find when you're in healthcare and you're overweight is that you,
Mistreatment.
yeah, you can be treated very poorly. You can be treated like you're not a person. And I just didn't want to risk it. I ended up with somebody who was about my size, who was a little bit older than me. That just felt like a better fit. She also had a partner who was more kind of traditionally sized, but absolutely lovely person, and could talk about, you know, advocacy in a really intelligent way. Like, they're lovely people. We're still Facebook friends to this day. Sometimes I see her partner at kids dance classes and stuff, and
Oh.
they're really good people, which I
Yeah.
think is really important. So yeah.
You have to find somebody who you relate to, so you're the most
Yeah.
comfortable with them,
Yeah.
especially when you're in an extremely vulnerable state, because delivery is that. It's very vulnerable.
Yes.
People are going to see literally every part of your body. But yes, I understand the need to have somebody who looks like you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was very much it. And I really appreciated having her there. She was really lovely. I do think if I'd known who I was going to have as my nurse for the second time, I probably would have been like, "No, we're good. We'll save the money for diapers or something." But you just don't know that sort of thing. So I think it was good to have her there.
Nurses can make or break it.
Yeah.
I had with Weston, I had like one good nurse, one bad nurse, one good nurse, one bad nurse because I was there for so long. But they can make or break the experience of delivery.
It's good to kind of be guaranteed a friendly face in the delivery room.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, Masha, is there anything that you would like to say to the women out there who are listening who are either considering this or who are in this journey?
Yeah, I would say be very flexible about who your village is going to be. The people you think are going to be in your village may kind of evaporate after you have your kid. There are people who may step up that you're not expecting to step up. And you may need to find a whole new kind of circle of people who are going to be there for you in that way. So, as hard as it is with all the things that you're trying to deal with a newborn, to a postpartum support group was life changing for me. I literally saw the women who are in my postpartum support group. I think I've seen 7 to 8 of them in the last 48 hours. This morning I stopped by one of their work to bring them a coffee because they had a baby recently. Yeah, they're amazing, amazing women. Some of us are closer than others at this point, and that's fine. I think going into it with a very concrete idea of who's going to be there for you and in what way just doesn't always work out. I mean, my sister was supposed to be there for me in a really substantial way. By the time I called to tell her I was pregnant, she was on her way to move out of the country. Like she was literally on the bus to the airport. So she was. Some people do anything to get out of babysitting, man. I mean, really. So
You decided to skip the country.
yeah, she's like, out.
Yeah.
Um,
I can relate though completely to that, and that might be something that you'll hear, I think, in today's episode that released. But your village is important, and some people just don't show up the way that you had been promised or you expected them to. It's really important to look outside of the people that you think are going to be there for you. And I'm still trying to find that almost 14 months into my postpartum journey. I do have under 5 people that I can rely on, but it
that's
is
about how big
important.
my really reliable group is too.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It's really important to look outside of that little group that you have
yeah.
to have those connections.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think some of the people that you're friends with when you're single and child free, you're friends with them because that's who they're looking to have in their circle. And when you no longer meet that criteria, sometimes it just doesn't work anymore.
Well, I will have to have you back for a deeper conversation about this topic. I look forward to that. Any last minute things that you would like to say maybe to your daughters if they ever should hear this in the future?
I know that during this conversation, it may seem like there were some things that didn't go really well in having you, but you two are the best thing in my life, and you make everything worthwhile, no matter how hard it was, no matter how many scary moments there were, no matter how many temper tantrums there are about cleaning up your toys. Love you guys so much, and you are the best. And anyone who's thinking about whether this is worth it, it is 100% worth it. There's nothing that I'm more sure of in my entire life.
Thank you so much, Masha. It has
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to ongoing conversations with you.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Masha, thank you for sharing your experience with us. It was truly heartwarming to hear about your path to parenthood and how incredibly sweet your daughters are. You are a real inspiration, and your story brought the dream of motherhood to life for another single mom by choice through your embryo donation and the partnership with Embryo Connections, whose information we have included in the show notes. To wrap up this episode, I especially loved your advice about being flexible with who your village is going to be. As we've heard from you and a few other guests of the show, The people who you think will be your village may not be the ones who ultimately show up once you become a mom. And that's okay. Sometimes the most meaningful support comes from unexpected places. Your village doesn't have to be perfect or traditional. It just has to be loving, supportive, and real. Masha, thank you again for your generosity, your openness, and the beautiful example you're setting for motherhood and what that can look like in so many different forms. Before you go, I just want to thank you for being here and for sharing this space with us. If choosing chaos has become even a small part of your journey, please make sure you subscribe so you never miss more stories of courage, connection, choice, and the beautiful mess of motherhood. You can find us on TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. Come join the conversations, share your story, and connect with other moms or moms-to-be, and help us continue to build this incredible, supportive community together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting us with your hearts and your hopes, and thank you for choosing this path with us. Until next time on Choosing Chaos.